The storm was sitting over Estes for a long period of time, dumping a lot of rain. The lake in Estes filled up so much that they had to release water or the dam was going to break.
We hit the ground running right after that meeting. It was like, all right, what do we need? How do we mobilize? We started thinking about barricades. We started thinking about the debris plan. We started thinking about what do we need to do to protect lives.
The Big Thompson River, a lot of the water comes out of Rocky Mountain National Park, goes into Lake Estes, and then down the Big Thompson Canyon.
We moved into Cedar Cove in 1994.
Cedar Cove is down from Estes Park. Everything from Estes Park runs down through the area. My dad used to fish frisbees and soccer balls and footballs out of the river. You know, my memories of Cedar Cove coming up as a child was always a peaceful, welcoming place.
Sylvandale is located right on the banks of the Big Thompson River. We're at the entrance to the Big Thompson Canyon. I guess the heart of who we are and how we started was as a dude ranch. We call ourselves a guest ranch, not a dude ranch, but it's the same thing. My family has had the ranch since 1946. We have a lot of river frontage. People find a lot of solace and healing with the river coming through.
Once the Big Thompson River hits Loveland, it goes straight through the middle of the city, splitting it in two.
It's something that people don't really notice. It's not a big river. Most of the time there's not a lot of water in it.
So it started raining, it's raining steadily, and it never quit.
The storm was sitting over Estes for a long period of time.
5, 6, 7 days in a row, and it was a lot of rain.
Lake Estes is not designed as a flood control reservoir, which means it doesn't have a lot of available storage. It's essentially water in, water out, and there's not much else they can do.
We were told that they were going to start releasing water from the dam. If they didn't release water from the dam, there was a potential it would break. It would have been catastrophic. There would have been a whole wall of water coming down instead of, what did. We were putting together a public meeting for the residents, giving them a way to get information.
When we heard there was high water coming down the canyon, of course the first thought was we had high water back in 1976. I was in action mode. I didn't have time to sit around and cry. There were people involved, there was buildings involved.
When you get the news, you're mostly focused on what's going on now. We came up and helped after the 1976 flood, so we were kind of aware on what the situation might look like.
Unit. We have reports of flooding in the Big Thompson Canyon. The river has breached the road at mile marker 78.
The crews that first night that were here in this building, the water's coming up closer and closer to the front of the building. They said all night it sounded like thunder, just continual thunder. It was the force of the water moving the large boulders in the river. That's moving boulders that are size of cars.
The city has 3 water transmission lines that come from the water treatment plant and down and serve the Loveland area. 2 of the 3 transmission lines were destroyed by the flood. And the third one was a 48-inch steel pipe, and we could hear rocks, boulders rolling along the bottom of the river, banging on the steel pipe. And so we knew that that pipeline was the last of the city's water supply, had anywhere from minutes to hours to at most a couple of days of survival before we're out of water for months.
We had reports of people on the The wrong side of the river that needed to get to the roadway needed to get higher. So we dispatched from the city a ladder truck and another company and a battalion chief up here to help the volunteers.
One of our staff members came running up and he says, "It's gone. It's just gone." And I said, "What? What are you talking about? It's gone." He says, "The lodge just went down the river."
What can we do at flood stage on the river to save a water transmission line, our last bit of water? We pulled a team together of city staff and consultants and contractors. In probably 30 minutes, we came up with a plan. We decided to take a pretty risky move to move the river during flood stage off of this water line. Never been done before.
Because of the terrain of the canyon, a lot of electric lines follow very close to the path of the river. We had several areas of the electric line that had been completely wiped out or severely damaged. The biggest thing that we were most concerned about was the damage that we saw at the hydroelectric facility. The hydro facility had been wiped out during the '76 flood and had been rebuilt. What we saw was that the entire first floor looked like it had water that was surrounding it. So we were very concerned that water had actually gotten into the control house. We had so many issues in the canyon, but we also were having a lot of issues in the city as well.
The water was getting higher. It was actually going to divide the city in half.
2 Charlie 117 and 2 Charlie 175 respond to the river crossing in the 900 block of South Lincoln. The river has flooded the road and we are receiving reports.
So all of the businesses that were in that South Lincoln corridor were all with water. There was water in all those businesses.
Imagine the worst and times it by 10. We actually had fish swimming around. A bunch of bass, things are floating everywhere. Even though our chop was flooded, we were still out trying to help with the tow service. We get called to get a car and the road had just eroded and the car just would fall off into an erosion area. It was a mess.
There was a community resource center established for people that were impacted by the flood.
It's a one-stop shop for everyone who needed support in all different ways. Financially, literally finding their other loved ones that had been lost or miscommunicated with during the flood. I remember a couple being barefoot, having just escaped. Their cat was with them. There were a lot of tears shed because they were still not in touch with loved ones that were up the canyon.
There's not much we can do. Our road is washed out, so we can't leave.
It was so noisy. You can imagine boulders bumping against boulders. You could notice the pictures on the walls moving.
When we started to really get a grasp of the destruction was the reports we were getting back from our ladder truck that responded here in the Big Thompson Canyon. They called and said, "We can't come back to Loveland because the road is gone."
It was all hands on deck from water, public works, power to save our last water transmission line, our last bit of water. Normally, such an effort would take months, if not years, of design and planning. We came up with a plan on how we were going to place rocks and trees and where. And so little by little, we directed the river's energy to the other bank. Probably 36 hours of round the clock, through the night work, it was pulled off.
There's so much work to be done, just making sure roads were closed and people were safe.
All of Loveland, where the river corridor goes through, was damaged. And so every single road crossing had to be closed and had damage. Every road that was overtopped had damage. Every water line crossing was damaged.
Staff was going through the floodplain and they were checking houses and making sure people weren't there, and they were checking the structures. We had to make sure, okay, were the structures safe to go back into? Did they have to be condemned?
Coming up after the flood was quite devastating. Nothing was there anymore.
The flood had taken not only a lot of the houses, but it took the road, it took the land. The whole cove was probably 10 feet lower than what it was before the flood.
2 people lost their lives here in Cedar Cove. Loveland Sterner and Patty Goodwine. The loss of neighbors, on top of all the destruction, brought a great sense of sorrow to the area.
The days after the flood were depressing. Realizing the extent of damage. I suppose even during that time, there may have been a little doubt. What was going to happen to this legacy in the future?
We had 4 foot of water and about 1 foot of mud. We had oil and everything else floating in the water.
There was a lot of things that we found on all of our open lands and park sites. We found sculptures, coolers, tractors, trailers, so many tires you wouldn't believe it.
The first couple of days of the flood, we weren't really sure how much damage was actually happening in the canyon. The narrows, that is the access to that area, was completely wiped out. We weren't actually able to assess the amount of damage that was there until we had a helicopter fly over and we started to see some of the areas that had been wiped out. There was so much damage to the hydroelectric facility and the dam. We also had several areas of the electric line that had been completely wiped out or severely damaged.
For 2 weeks straight, I worked, over 80-hour weeks. And that wasn't just me, that was everybody involved with the immediate flood response. And then realizing this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And it's going to take not only months to get through initial response, but it's going to take years to recover.
Shortly after the flood, as part of recovery, we were able to get $600,000 through City Council to be given to the Chamber of Commerce to award grants out to those businesses most impacted.
It was helping them keep their lights on. It was helping them go through the mitigation and the flood recovery, the cleanup, when many of them didn't even have flood insurance. A lot of them didn't even realize they were in a flood zone.
The way everybody came together as a community to help us, from the city, the Chamber of Commerce, a couple of shops here in town that brought equipment and helped us clean things out. There was many customers came down.
When it came to the hydroelectric facility, we had lost the previous one in '76. We had lost the current one in 2013. And so we didn't think that it was in the best interest of our community to rebuild that hydroelectric facility. Instead of rebuilding the hydro facility, we were able to build the very first community solar facility at Foothills to serve the entire community, and it was a much bigger power plant than we ever were able to have up at the hydro facility, much more resilient and in an area that's not prone to natural disasters.
We were blessed by a group of young people. Well, they came in with their wheelbarrows and their shovels like this was not a problem. So they found these rocks and they decorated them, and each one of them left a rock for us. Disasters always bring the best out of people. People are always there to help you and give a hand up, and that's the beauty.
Lots of bad things that occur because of a flood, but there are good things that come out of it also. It gave the community really an opportunity to come together like maybe never before. People lost their homes, but there's people right there stepping up to serve them, to take care of them, to provide food, shelter, services.
It was a good sense of community. There was a lot of these community efforts that would come up, and they were a big help.
We had such a collaborative effort with the community. We had over 17,000 hours of volunteer service, and what that looked like was group after group coming into these sites, cutting up timber, raking out silt, planting new grasses and trees.
The city as a whole pulled together. We had a job to do, and we did it, and everybody just played a part.
It was a wake-up call, provided us an opportunity to change the trajectory of how decisions were being made regarding the river corridor, which for decades, many decades, has been made one way. And now we have a chance that as we rebuild, let's try to make better decisions, build in resiliency. That led to the creation of a river master plan, which we had never had before, Larimer County had never had before, that would help guide the future.
There were a lot of things that we did post-flood to increase resiliency. The water utility rebuilt the line that went through the meadow to make it more hardened and less prone to the next flood, because we know there's going to be another flood. We took the opportunity on the power side when we rebuilt our lines to make them more resilient, not just moving them outside of the floodplain, but also rebuilding to current standards and making sure that they were ready for the next phase in case there were forest fires or other things that would happen in the canyon. Inside of the city limits, we went through post-flood to take a look to see if we had any areas where we had vulnerability on our electric gears. We did a lot of hardening and put in more redundancy. Citywide, we rebuilt our bridges to be more resilient.
It's been 10 years of construction. And I think we are finally to a point where we can sit back and watch the trees grow and enjoy our community again.